Welcome everyone to the Data Splash podcast, brought to you by Upriver. If you're a data engineer, a data leader, or just someone trying to make sense of what the hell is going on with AI and data right now, you are in the right place. Here with me today is Harel Shein, Senior Engineering Manager at Datadog, and we are going to talk about OpenLineage, of course. Harel is part of Datadog's product engineering team and works on data observability products. He previously led data engineering and R&D teams at WeWork Astronomer, and he also in the technical steering committee member of OpenLineage, and also commit himself a lot of code. Now, say hi to Ariel.
Hi everyone, hi Do. I wouldn't say commit a lot of code, but some code.
Some code, some code. So before we are diving in, we start with our tradition, the data splash. 30 seconds, no time to think, just instinct. So let's jump in. Most underrated skill in data.
Ooh, getting people aligned on definitions.
Dream vacation destination.
Cook Islands.
Cook Islands. What is going to break most of the data pipelines in your environment tomorrow?
Anything you can think of.
One tool you cannot live without.
Last few months, Cloud Code for sure.
Cloud Code. So he's committing a lot of code. Cloud Codes. You are doing nothing. Cloud Codes commit all the things to OpenLineage.
Exactly. I do zero work.
Zero work. Exactly. So for the part of the audience, the very small part of the audience that does not know anything about OpenLineage and basically about like your work there, can you give us a bit overview about the open source, about the project?
Yeah, of course. So OpenLineage is basically an open standard for emitting lineage metadata from data pipelines where the work is actually happening. So it's basically a collection of a few things. So one is a specification, and that's really the gist of it. It's like a JSON specification that talks about how you reason about a job, how you reason about a job run, and the inputs and outputs of that job. And as well, it includes a bunch of clients in various languages, and like in Python, Go, Java, for emitting OpenLineage events, as well as a bunch of out-of-the-box integrations for platforms like Spark, like dbt. For Airflow, for example, the implementation is actually built into Apache Airflow itself, and that's the case for a few other projects who basically decided to build in OpenLineage into their open source project. And
interesting. Who is the director in Astronomer that decided on this architecture choice?
So it was an Apache Airflow decision. There was an Airflow improvement plan spec that came out, and it was not a trivial decision to make, to be perfectly honest. Like, it needed community consensus, which is what I like about open source work. You kind of like, it pushes you to do things just the right way, because you need everyone to align on the thing. So so just to wrap out on like OpenLineage itself, we basically incorporated under the Linux Foundation data and AI subdivision or project, I don't remember. And why it matters is no one wants to write boilerplate integration code, even if it's cheap to do today with Claude, as we've just established. It's not really cheap, right? Like, you still need to maintain it. It still needs to be evolved. Still, you need to write point-to-point solutions for every single thing. Isn't it nicer to just have a spec that does this and everyone contributes to? So that's really what OpenLineage is about.
Interesting. And before we are jumping into OpenLineage and how it's changing the way we work in data engineering, I'd love to hear how AI affects managing an open source, and someone that's really deep into that. What did you see that really happened in this space during the last year?
So I'll say some open source projects have it definitely harder than others. I know of maintainers that are really just like, there's a huge stream of just people vibe coding PRs directly into the projects without knowing much about the project or what they're trying to do, just trying to get like an open source contribution on their checklist, and that's really hard because it creates pressure on the maintainer of the open source project, right? Like, so anyone can go in, drive by, post a PR, and now it's on you to like, okay, well, what is this person trying to do? What do they care about? And it's not like, open source maintainers are these like omnipotent people who can, we're smarter than anyone else. We're same humans as anyone else. Now, and we don't necessarily get paid for it, right? So like now we need to figure out, okay, how much time do I spend on this, and how much effort do I put in to unpack all of this? And that's really hard. We've seen some of this in OpenLineage too, and I think what we're trying to do there is, we've started like one thing we pushed a couple months ago is basically like an agents markdown file to the OpenLineage repo to at least try to guide the agents that people are using on OpenLineage. Cool. Because like, hey, do not ever make a change to the spec unless you know what you're doing, right?
Rule number one.
That to happen. If you're making an evolution to a thing, make sure that maybe there's no other consumers of it. Maybe the thing you're trying to change is already represented in the spec. So kind of trying to guide the agents in doing that work, as well as how they draft their pull requests. So that's one thing. Hard for me to say if it's working well or not yet, but
it's a cool idea.
I hope so. I don't know. It was one of those very few PRs that I contribute. But I'd say like one case where it's been useful, at least for us on the maintainer side, is we've been trying to push for the last few weeks. We've been trying to push a change for more explicit table-to-table lineage in the spec, and getting a bunch of test cases, which was like much easier because you can like, okay, you have all the spec, point cloud on it. And actually a conversation I had with some friends at OpenAI last week was like, coding agents are really good at data models for open source projects. They're really good at understanding that because that's what they were trained on. So that plays in our benefit because coding agents do really understand open source way better than closed source.
Oh, cool. Wow, good. I did not think about that, but it totally makes sense. So moving back to specifically OpenLineage, I'm sure that the first thing that our audience think about is where I can use OpenLineage, like what is the main real world use cases that it solves today.
So,
and of course, Lineage is a use case, but like when companies use that, where do you see like more need for that? Different industries, different data platform usage.
Yeah, and it's such a term that people just drop in. It's like, I need Lineage.
Exactly.
Like, why do you need Lineage? You just like really like looking at graphs with your data pipelines, and sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes people just want to see that you understand and capture well the semantics of their pipeline. Sometimes just like it instills trust in people to know that their mental model exists in your product, and that's actually something that. I'm going to wear a non-data observability and OpenLineage hat. Like when I was working on the APM product at Datadog, that was also part of like the thing. Customers want to understand that you are capturing their services and like understanding the microservice architecture that they have and what are the systems and how they talk to each other, that just kind of gives them trust that you understand what's going on. So what are the use cases? I mean, I really care about operational use cases for OpenLineage, hence working at Datadog, I think is probably a good reflection of that. Because when something goes wrong, understanding very quickly how it broke, why it broke, what is the downstream impact of the thing to help you quickly triage and understand the severity of it. For like propagating data quality issues, I found it really important and useful, right? So you can use Lineage to say, oh, hey, I need to know if there's anything wrong upstream of this specific dashboard or this specific reporting table that's very critical for my organization. The use cases that it powers that are probably more meaningful to a bunch of other folks are like compliance and PII tracking across organizations, cost attribution, and even just being in like dev loop workflows where someone's about to push a thing and break everything for other people, and kind of like, hey, don't do this.
Yeah.
You have downstream consumers.
It's interesting. So you said, first of all, like operations of the data platform, and secondly, regulation and basic and governance of the platform. This is the main things.
Yeah, I would say those are like the top categories for sure.
For sure. Amazing. So how does AI change these use cases? And I know I have my own answer, but we love to hear it how you see that.
So one, I'm going to hold you accountable to give your own answer on this.
I know.
But for me, I think it's the velocity of how much of this is happening. So AI, the thing that AI does is it amplifies people, right? For better or for worse. If you knew what you were doing and you're using AI and you're using AI well, then you can do a lot more. If you didn't know what you were doing and if you're not using AI well, then you're just going to do a lot more bad things. And so I think it just really increases the signal on any interaction that a human does. So if you're just kind of stumbling around a data pipeline or a data warehouse and trying to ask a bunch of questions and you don't know what you're asking for and you're not giving good guidance, you're going to get a bunch of answers, and those might not be the right answers, or very likely are not the right answers. And I think the impact here is having good observability of that layer and having good observability of your, and I know this is like a very overloaded term that everyone likes to say context now, but having really good context on all these things, it does help you, because from that you can give a sort of like analytics observability kind of point of view, where like, hey, by the way, in your organization, you have like a lot of people asking these questions and getting this data. You may want to either, tune how they interact with agents and like be there in the loop and help guide them, or maybe you want to create a materialized view for this, or maybe you want to create like, like a centralized data model to answer this question and inject that context into how people interact with your data warehouse. So I think having Lineage information helps you, like Lineage and kind of like through observing all these different tools and how they're being used, it helps you understand what's going on in your environment. So like for me, it's just, it's an intensity thing. But I'm curious to how you're seeing it.
Yeah, so I think from the usage perspective, I agree with you. Like when agents want to use the data that you have in your platform, Lineage is a key part of their ability to do that. Because Lineage represents the flow of information in the data platform. And the agents, when they are using the data, they need to know what this data means. So they can use some metadata description that someone's created for them, or they can look on the code and the lineage how this data created. And when people using this data, they pretty much know, like they have in their head how the data created. But agents don't have it. They don't have a head. Maybe they have memories that someone will update. But in order to really understand what the data means, they need to look back on how it created and which calculation he passed. So Lineage become fundamentally important in order to give agents ability to understand what the data means and use this data from analytics for any automations that you want to do. So I believe that Lineage is going to be increasingly more important when organization will really try to adopt agentic use cases. And we see this in our customer, we see this with conversation in the industry. So in the same way, it's exactly the same. There will be more interactions that Lineage will be required, and I believe it will be mostly in every agentic interactions that the agent wants to understand what he have in the data.
For sure.
So this is how I see that. And yeah, it's really amazing. So do you see that it's already affecting the open source activity?
You mean like usage of AI?
Yes, like from both sides. Maybe it's create like more demand from vendors or like people in the community to create more plugins and more ways to like create the lineage, and maybe some changes in the format that you need to create and the ways that people consume the lineage in the other side.
So one of the things I'm hearing and seeing in other companies and people who I talk to is it becomes a lot easier for people to, as I said earlier, I think like, dip their toes and like use an MCP server and interact with a warehouse or interact with any tools that is being offered and just kind of like self-serve themselves on the data. So something that maybe they wouldn't have done before, but now they have more capabilities, they feel like they have more power, or the perception of they have more power to do this on their own. And the impact of that is like sometimes they can do it right, and there's a chance that they did everything correct, but in many cases they're not going to do it correct. And like you see sometimes like a VP coming to a meeting with a clotted up analysis that they did without talking to anyone because for whatever reason, right? They maybe they didn't want to bother someone, or and they just they come in with their own analysis. And you sit there and the maybe there's executives in the room, like the VP of data is looking at it, like, where did you get these numbers? This does not look right to me, right? But like imagine if they came with that analysis and they had like an appendix and the thing they share, like this is data from this table, which is calculated from this table, and that at least will give the audience a sense of like security of like, okay, this is probably fine. I can see that they used like qualified tables here. Of course, there's a product to be built around this. But I think it really makes the need for that kind of tooling for people much more important than it was before. Just because it's easier to do, quote unquote easier, right? It's easier to do, not necessarily do right.
Amazing. So what I'm hearing from you, two things. First of all, like a way to consume Lineage with agent, like MCP integration, etc. And secondly, a way to like people is starting to use more analytics because it's easier, everybody in the organization, but it's need to be much more easier to trust the analytics. And this way, the OpenLineage need to create a way to consume it easily with AI, without AI. So when someone present a number, he can base this number upon like the flow of data. Yes. And another thing interesting that I think that happening with AI is our ability to access unstructured data. And I know that we love to think about Lineage as gathering of tables, columns, numbers, but organization has like bunch of like documents, folders that today we are not looking on them as part of the data flow. Like, how do you think? Like, do you think like Lineage should also include that, And yeah, how?
I mean, so first off, very, very leading question. Of course, it should include, right?
Yes,
Like,
yeah. No, but how,
but
and like it's a huge technology tech challenge to do that.
100%, because I think in some ways, because of the stochastic nature of large language models, it breaks an intrinsic part of the contract of OpenLineage, or of how we reason about data lineage, because we say, okay, lineage is for compliance in some cases, and if it's for compliance, it has to be deterministic. We can't have two different results for like scanning this unstructured document or doing like this, scanning through a code base and trying to infer what that code base is doing. And if sometimes you're getting not exactly the same result, that might be an issue. So I think we need to have ways to reason about it for unstructured data that is slightly different from, assuming we do kind of like LLM-based heuristics of figuring out what this thing is. But maybe there are other ways. I don't know. But like this, I think there's a lot of work to be had here. I haven't put enough effort myself individually to figure it out. Maybe you did.
I did not, but for that we have the community. So anybody here that wants a super interesting and important problem to work about, here it is. Add unstructured data to OpenLineage. It's quite a challenge.
I will definitely review that PR.
Yes. So I think it's leading me to my next question. If you had an army of engineers to push code to OpenLineage, but good code, not like AI code, what will you build next? And let's put the unstructured area aside.
Yeah. Because that was going to be a very easy go-to answer, right?
Yes.
So I'd say a few things. So one is, and this might sound like a very boring problem, but I would actually deploy them not to like work on the OpenLineage project, but I would want them to work on each individual data processing technology out there and embed OpenLineage into it. So like I'd want committers from Spark to add the OpenLineage integration directly into Spark, and I'd want, and I'm not going to go through every single data technology, but you get the point. So I think that for me would be like the top priority, and then really the ultimate goal is the OpenLineage repository having just the spec and the client libraries and none of the integration code. That would, by the way, help with the maintainer burden that we have. So
I want
trying to get
army of data engineers that will write code that I don't need to review.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. And I think a second thing, which is more like it's like something we haven't thought of enough in OpenLineage, is going deeper on like machine learning or model training, I should say, for AI, and kind of like how does the spec work for this space? How do applied scientists, machine learning engineers use OpenLineage for their work? Because it's pretty similar, right? Like, I know the Ray community worked a little bit on capturing OpenLineage and using that in Ray jobs. So I do think there's a need there, and I would love this army of engineers, or at least a battalion.
Yes. Amazing. So last question. Where do you see data engineering going in the next few years?
I don't know where engineering is going in the next few years, let alone data engineering. But I'd say probably the ownership of the business itself, I think, is going to become more and more important, and like having more understanding of what it is that you're trying to do. I think I think focusing more on contracts and meaning, and delegating a lot of the execution and like the nitty gritty of the work to AI and to agents, and focusing on what really matters, which is your company's business, the problems you're trying to solve, and then stepping in when you need to make an executive decision, right? Like still,
Yeah.
we as we've established, the AI doesn't think. It can provide a bunch of things, but then you need to make the decision.
Yeah. So focusing on the business and let AI do the technical work.
Some of it, not all of it.
Some
right?
of it, all of
Still,
it. Yes.
I wouldn't, like I would still very heavily review a spec proposal from Claude on changing an OpenLineage primitive.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in the open source community, it's important because everybody can see the code. So
Exactly.
exactly. Amazing. So thank you very much, Harel, for your time. It was super interesting conversation. Couple of takeaways that I took personally from this conversation. First of all, how Lineage is critical when you try to use agents in the organization. They have to use the Lineage in order to understand what the data means and how to use that. Secondly, that we need to push all the data tools to adopt OpenLineage. It's critical, so we'll have one way to look on our all data flow with one format, and we will be able to really create a map of the flowing of data. And lastly, if you search an open and hard problem to solve, OpenLineage is a great and important open source, and you can try to tackle any of the problems that we talked about it in this episode. So
that second point was a bit like Lord of the Rings, one spec to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them.
I think it's need to be on the description of the project for sure. All right, that is a wrap. Huge thanks to Harel for bringing the insights and keeping it real. If you enjoyed this Flow the Data Splash podcast, we have got a lot more coming your way. Until next time, keep your data flowing, and we will see you in the next stream. Thank you very much, Harel.
Thanks, Ido. Thanks for having me.